It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce Marta Deutsch and now Bolak, and with your daughter Sylvie Schatz. And Marta, you were born in Hungary?
No, by chance and chance, nothing is chance, but at that moment her mother was in Vienna.
But so just because my mother was from Vienna and she was to visit in Vienna, and this time I gave birth.
She was by chance in Vienna because she was originally from Austria. She was very, very important. Her mother was from the family, very, very famous family, Pappenheim. And they were and her father, meaning her grandfather, Rav Wolf Pappenheim, was very famous. He knew very well Rav Yisrael Salanter, and his grandfather knew the Chassam Sofer. So they were very big Askanim, and therefore her place where she came from was Austria, and therefore my mother is born in Austria, but her sisters are already born in Budapest in Hungary. Her father was purely from Hungary.
And can you mention a bit about your father's family? Where did they come from?
My father's family, that's not a... My mother was in Bergen Belsen in 1944 because Eichmann came with those genius ideas, and from there, miraculously, they were taken to in Switzerland to a camp of refugees. And my father was in that camp, and that's where they knew. But he was from France. The rest of the family came to Eretz Israel. But she got stuck in Europe, and that's how I am from France.
So I just want to ask, how was she one of the survivors from the Kasztner train? How did
she survive?
With the Kasztner train, how was your...
By miracle, her father was a very famous person and very necessary for the Kehille. And he was
in Budapest?
He was a teacher of 2,000 kids, and not a teacher, a menahel of Bet Sefer. He had a smicha from Rav Dushinsky. He was very, very famous, and miraculously his family was put in the Kasztner train, in the same wagon as the Satmererov.
He was in the same...
Que tu étais que vous avez miraculeusement été mis dans le train de Kasztner. The last one. Last train.
C'était pas miraculeusement. C'était par honneur pour mon père.
Yeah, it wasn't miraculously. It was honor for her father who did so much for the community and was necessary. When he came to Eretz Israel, because he got many proposals to go to America, but he said after all what he saw, only Eretz Israel, the Chazon Ish requested from him to become Chaver Knesset of Aguda, which they didn't have from Hungary. And he was made for politics as much as you and me were made for dancing in opera, and he died young. So it wasn't for a very long time. In Eretz Israel in those days you didn't have hospitals that were on nothing, it was terrible. It's Mina Shomayim and everybody has a date, but he was let to die. They didn't take care of his health. He was sick.
Can I ask, Sylvie, how old was your mum when you were on the Kasztner train? Or do you remember going on the Kasztner train?
Quel âge tu avais quand vous avez été sauvé de Bergen Belsen? 23 ans, non?
Non, moi.
Tu t'es marié à quel âge?
Justement, marié jusqu'à 23.
Oui, almost 23. She was
23. Pas tout à fait.
Almost. C'est pour ça que j'ai dit presque. J'ai dit presque.
And do you remember going on the train? Do you remember?
Yes, of course. Tu te rappelles ce qui s'est passé dans le train et tout? Tu te rappelles le train de Kasztner? Of course. Old memories are much easier than fresh memories.
C'est pas que je me rappelle. Il y a des choses dont on se souvient toujours.
On top of it, she says there are things one never forgets.
And how long was one on the train before one came to Bergen Belsen?
How long was she
on the train before it came to Bergen Belsen?
No, it was taken from Bergen Belsen to Switzerland.
But it left from Budapest. It left from Hungary.
I don't understand.
Le train, il est parti de Budapest et il est allé à Bergen Belsen.
Oui.
Ça, c'était déjà le train de Kasztner?
Oui.
Non, puisqu'après vous avez été sauvé par le train de Kasztner. Le train de Kasztner, il partait de Bergen Belsen et il est allé en Suisse.
Oui, une partie.
Oui, mais le premier, comment vous êtes allé de Budapest à Bergen Belsen?
Là,
Mais pas le train de Kasztner.
merci. Merci.
Le train qui vous a amené à Bergen Belsen, c'était pas prévu qu'on va vous sauver tout de suite.
Non, non, non.
Alors pourquoi c'était un train de Kasztner? She doesn't remember. The first train, it's not logical. From Budapest to they were taken into wagons to Bergen Belsen, planning to be destroyed. Later on, from Bergen Belsen for weeks to Switzerland, and they didn't know where they're going. That was Kasztner. But the first one was just horrible.
And can I ask, did you ever see Kasztner? Did your mom ever meet
Tu
him?
as vu, tu as rencontré Kasztner, tu l'as connu?
Non,
Toi non, hein?
je ne me rappelle pas que j'avais.
She doesn't remember if she knew him or not.
C'est possible que oui.
She's from 1920. She's from 1921, my mother.
Sure.
She's wonderful for.
It's incredible.
Ouais, ouais. Non, tu te rappelles pas si tu. She can't say no, she can't say yes.
Okay,
A year ago,
sure.
she would have
Je ne me
known.
rappelle pas quoi.
Si tu as connu Kasztner ou pas.
Je l'ai vu, mais en fait,
She saw him, but she didn't know him.
je ne connaissais pas vraiment.
Not really know him.
And it's controversial because he
Yeah, yeah.
saved Yin, but he could have mentioned to others to leave as well.
Yeah,
So he's
he
a
was,
it's
he
a
was
very
punished for
controversial.
choosing people that he liked and his family. Would
And
you not have done the same?
I know, but there was also very wealthy people that could afford to go on the train, and they asked to take the Rabbonim, and they took your grandfather and your
My grandfather was a big rob.
yeah. So there were Rabbonim. There was the Satmar Rebbe, and there
Yeah.
was Jungeras.
Rebbetzin Jungras was together with her in the. I knew very well Rebbetzin Jungras. She was in the camp with my mother.
They were in Bergen Belsen together. And does your mum remember also being in the camp? There were a few months in Bergen Belsen.
Yeah, but you don't forget such things. Already when the Gestapo in Budapest made limitations, and she remembers everything.
And can I ask, does your mum remember the name Rekha Sternbuch? Because she helped.
We are almost mishpocho. We are the three brothers Sternbuch, one of whom is Eli Yitzhak, and I forgot the name of the second. So one was Gita, one was Resha, and one was Pitsu. That's the name. And Pitsu is the first cousin of my mother.
Really?
So we were. Tu te rappelles, est-ce que tu as connu personnellement Resha Sternbuch, la belle-sœur de Pitsu?
Oui.
She knew her. She's known because of the book.
But she also helped raise the finance.
Une chambre ensemble.
Où dans le camp? Non.
Non,
En Suisse.
dans un hôtel.
She was once in a hotel in the same room as Resha Sternbuch. When she was in Switzerland. They married still during the war. They married in. Quand est-ce que tu t'es mariée? Now she doesn't remember, but she married before the end of the war in Switzerland, in the courtyard of a French man who had run away to Switzerland and who later on in France, he was a big lawyer, Mathieu Muller. He had a courtyard in Geneva, and that's where they got married, my parents, during the war still, but the last year of the war. So she knew Resha, and tu connaissais aussi Gita Sternbuch, la sœur. She knew Gita, and and the third one was her cousin, which I knew very well as well. And whose children, some live here.
With Rekha Sternbuch, she helped finance to get the money to get the.
Her husband. She was a famous one because she was the Meise. She was hyperactive and he not. But without her husband, she couldn't have done anything.
But because of their efforts, they were released.
Hein?
Que j'étais quoi?
Non, Resha Sternbuch a beaucoup aidé, mais j'ai dit son mari aussi parce qu'il était derrière. Il était moins connu, mais c'est lui qui faisait l'argent and everything, of course.
But they got the finance to get the Yidden released from Bergen Belsen to go into Switzerland.
Some.
Yes, she was very instrumental. In
She had no fear. She would go in the middle of the forest at night by bike with dogs after her.
Yeah.
She had no fear. She was such a type. She was born a Rottenberg. We had the schus to have a rov that was thrown away from Antwerp for all kinds of reasons, and instead became a Rav in Paris. And it was Mina Shamayim because he was extremely powerful, and in Antwerp people were who they were and they didn't change. And in Paris he created an unbelievable Yiddishkeit. He made a very big, and she was his sister. Recha Sternburg was a Rothenberg, so she was strong. Yeah. Recha Sternburg est née Rothenberg. Elle était une sœur du Rav Rothenberg à Paris. Ils ont une force, ils avaient une force.
Oui. Oui, c'est juste.
Like the Ponyvich Rav saw a desert and said, here will be Yeshivat Ponyvich, here. He saw Paris, and there were people, unbelievable people, but doing private work more. And he said, here will be a school, here will be a koilet, here will be a yeshiva, here will be a mikveh, here will be, and people thought he's crazy, and he wasn't.
And Sylvie, what happened to your mother's family that didn't go on the train?
They did go on the train.
But those family that didn't, what happened to the aunts?
They died. The family of her father, most of them were destroyed.
They were deported?
Yeah.
And most probably went to Auschwitz?
Yeah.
And were there any family that survived in Budapest? Or?
First of all, my mother's sisters and parents went to Eretz Israel and survived. And a lot of, she had family in Switzerland already. Mm-hmm. And dans ta famille, pas dans la famille de ton mari, de ton père, pardon, de ton père, dans ta famille, attends une seconde, hein, can you give it to me? Dans ta famille, est-ce qu'il y a des gens qui ont survécu en dehors de ta proche famille, de ton père et de tes sœurs? Allô?
De la famille.
You pushed it already?
Okay.
Allô? Qu'est-ce que tu dis? Personne n'a survécu? Il n'y a personne qui n'a survécu? Most of them didn't survive.
Didn't survive.
No, most of them didn't survive.
Wow.
Non, c'était... Si. Donc, Yann,
Et sa femme, la Suisse?
comment?
Allô? Non, j'ai pas compris ce qui se passe. On a un monsieur charmant d'Afrique du Sud qui est en train de poser des questions à maman sur l'Holocauste et sur tout ça. Maman est assise sur le sofa. Alors je t'appelle dans quelques minutes, hein? Oui. Oui. En beige. Je vais regarder, je suis pas à la maison, je vais regarder. Beaucoup de chance.
That it's working. That it's running.
Oui, non, tu marques que je te dois moins, je te dois encore un peu. Bon, on va regarder,
Sure.
là, je te fais
Well,
confiance.
it's such a privilege to meet you. It really
Mais j'ai
is.
parlé aujourd'hui à Tipeee une demi-heure. D'accord, d'accord, hein, on se reparle, hein, bye. C'était Denise, elle va rappeler après, it's my sister. She lives in Antwerp.
Wow.
She called for my mother, but I said a bit later. Oui, quoi d'autre? What else?
Did your mom ever go back to Hungary? Did she ever
Okay.
go?
My father did not travel so easily. It was a love story. It wasn't a b'di'evet. But they met in the camp. In 2 days they decided to get married in the camp of survivors of. But he worked very, very hard in life, and he didn't travel. So we went always on mountain. He did everything. He had polio when he was 3 years old. So they were not, in those days you didn't move so easily. And my mother didn't want to go back because it was bad memories. Il demande si tu retournais en Hongrie. And I always wanted them to go, but they didn't go. À cause de moi.
Ah oui.
So, and then when he had finished work and they would have already been able to go, my father physically was not up to it anymore. He needed doctors, he had had a heart attack already, etc. They were not courageous, not easily. And then I spent many, many years in Chutz La'aretz, in the middle of being in Eretz Israel. All my children are born in Israel. But the last year when we were going back to Eretz Israel, we were stuck by Rabbanim who asked us to do a favor and to go for 1 year to Hungary. And I don't know a word of Hungarian because my father didn't know. It's not my both parents. But the accent was good because I would hear my mother, but I didn't know 3 words. And when I was in Hungary, I decided, my father wasn't alive anymore, that my mother is going to come. But she's the sense of duty. So she went because she gave a crash course. My husband was Rosh Koilel, and they wanted to send them to learn for Kiruv, to learn Hungarian. It was totally mixed and everything. So my mother came for 10 days and gave 2 hours a day to the men and separated 2 hours to the women of the Koilel, a crash course of Hungarian. I think in the Guinness Book of Records, my mother is the oldest teacher that taught marvelously. She was brilliant always her whole life. Without the war, she would have been a big lawyer or a big teacher or something big. And she taught the people for those days. So she had a mission, so she agreed to come. And then she almost didn't recognize anything. She recognized the street, but it was changed. I'll ask her. Je lui ai raconté que dans quelles conditions tu es venu en Hongrie. Parce que j'ai créé un besoin que les gens du Kollel doivent apprendre le hongrois. Et tu leur as appris le hongrois. Tu te rappelles? It was, they have videos, not me, where she's over 80. Yes. And she's telling a young man, it's not good, you don't know it. It was marvelous. They all loved her.
And this was in Budapest. The Kollel was in Budapest.
Yeah.
Gee, oh, it's amazing. And can I just ask with your mom, when you discussed the Kasztner train, or Kasztner, because he's very controversial.
I know, she doesn't want to mix in, she doesn't know. We don't know.
But
he was killed.
He was assassinated.
We feel that he didn't deserve to be killed, but you know what conspiracies are? Just listen to the stupidness of today. Sure. You know that the Twin Tower as well is the American concept.
Can I ask, did your family, when they had the trial, did they testify in the trial?
Quand il y a eu comment on dit en français, ils ont jugé Kasztner à la cour d'appel, un procès. She reminds me of the words in French. You understand? So, quand il y a eu le procès, est-ce que vous êtes allé pour témoigner ou quelque chose? She sings and not, but she can't remember. Okay. There are things which are blank. She doesn't remember. Peut-être tes parents sont allés, ou bien ton père vivait encore? She can't remember. Perhaps part of the family she doesn't remember.
And Sylvie, what message did your mum impart on you, and what message does she have for the future generations when she speaks about her experiences?
My father was not taken to the war as a soldier because of his polio, but he was a very capable man who was not afraid, and he helped a lot of people. He saved a lot of people. He had 4 or 5 passports, so he could bluff, and he would pass them to them, but not for money ever, nothing. He would pass them to Switzerland, and he did a lot of things. Like his name was Bolak, he had one passport, Bolo, and all kinds. He played the guy and everything, and he but like the refuseniks, when they come to Israel, sometimes lose themselves. There they were heroes, and here they're one of the whole. My father did not hate the period of the war because he was somebody, much more. You understand? Yeah. The fascinating situation, and he drove us crazy. I am such a second generation, never to force us to finish the food, never to throw anything, really? All these things.
Did your parents speak to you a lot about?
My father wanted to speak much more than we ever listened in those days. It's before the fashion of speaking. My mother spoke much less. It's always like that. My mother spoke like that. Quel est le message? But she did say, don't be too spoiled, manage on your own. They gave us a certain strength, but they were much stronger than us. Que tu nous as donné de la guerre. J'ai dit que papa nous a jamais laissé de la nourriture. My brother would put, if he was a little kid, he would take the food in his mouth, go to sleep for 3 hours in the afternoon, and when he would get up, it was still here. Because my father, if not, would be very angry at him. So, wow. And like culture-wise, it's very different than anybody else. The Sephardim, some of them who didn't leave it, they throw everything when the bread is not perfectly fresh. And the Americans, they throw the cheese, white cheese, if it's half an hour out of the fridge. So between the two, the South Africans are more from after the war and everything, more like the Europeans. And what we did learn from our parents that we're in Golus, meaning the Americans, they say, by uns in America, we never say it in Europe. We know that we're there because he agrees that we're there, and tomorrow we could not be there. Between the Crusades, between the Inquisition, between the, you know, the beautiful blue Danube is pretty red. You understand what I'm saying?
When,
so that's why.
It was the whole community, it was decimated.
So, tu te rappelles pas, encore j'ai dit que vous nous avez appris qu'on n'est jamais 100% chez soi. Les Américains, ils disent by uns in America, et en Europe on le dit pas. You know, she was there, and then suddenly 3 families were put in the same house, and a few days later they were taken by the Gestapo too. So they know that things are, that Olamaze is not, we were never spoiled, we never took seriously that it has to be furniture from 300 years ago. When they married, they didn't have anything. She got her first ring a year and a half later. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm the oldest, so she spoke more to me. And when I read the Rashi about Vashti, we're talking about Purim, that she was so sadistical that she made the Jewish girls work naked and on Shabbos, and that's why she had to go naked and this. So it reminds me of stories that my mother told me. And also I thought it doesn't exist, but it does exist. The women Nazis and women were worse than the men sometimes. But she wasn't afraid, she was never afraid. Before they were taken, when the Jews had to wear the star, and they were allowed to go out of the house only when all the shops were closed, so they could die from hunger. So she would paint her hair in blonde, go with macaroni, it's like a braid which you put here, look totally like a goy, she did. She was beautiful and she looked like a goy. And go at the time without the things, she didn't have fear. I'm jealous. She didn't have it. I have fear. And I'm such a second generation that all the wars in Israel, I'm kacha. I lived the wars in Israel, and she's not afraid.
And did your parents, did they know other survivors? Did they mix socially with other survivors from the Kasztner train?
No.
They never kept in touch with...
No, but because of life, not because of Shite. Because after they married, and first they lived in a city called Limoges in France, where during the war they had already run away with certain famous people, like the famous Rabbi Deutsch, who was originally Hungarian, who was in France. He's famous. He was famous. And then when they decided, whatever the reasons, to come to Paris, for a year and a half they didn't find a dire. And where they found was a cheap dire. My whole life we were in rental. And they lived in a place where most of the Jews were not at that time, in a beautiful part of Paris, the high society, but goyim, or assimilated Jews. So life is such that they didn't. There were some Jews that were a lot together, they not. We were in a different part of Paris.
Gee, it's amazing.
You understand?
And Sylvie, can I ask, did she speak a lot to you about that train, about going on the train when you were growing up?
No.
Or the miracle that her parents
went,
that her mother went,
that everybody came out, yes, but that's all. We didn't speak a lot. And my father wanted... On n'a pas beaucoup parlé du train dans lequel tu étais et toutes ces choses-là. Tu n'as pas beaucoup raconté. À force, tu m'as raconté, surtout à moi, parce que j'étais l'aînée et qu'on était toute la semaine seule, alors tu m'as raconté, mais pas beaucoup. Papa parlait plus. Non, il voulait parler plus, mais il était très triste qu'on n'écoutait pas. Parce que il était triste qu'on n'écoutait pas assez. Papa.
C'est juste.
Parce qu'il ne savait pas résumer, alors ça commençait toujours depuis le début, avec tous les détails, et ensuite on n'avait plus la force.
And Sylvie, can I ask, with your mom, who from the family went on the train?
Her father, her mother, her sisters, and her. There were 5 sisters, there were no boys. Qui est-ce qui allait dans le train? Ton père, ta mère, tes sœurs et toi?
Oh, et les sœurs?
Oui.
Les sœurs?
Tes sœurs et toi?
Et moi.
And then from Bergen Belsen, where did they go when they came to Switzerland?
To a camp of refugees, which wasn't perfect either. My father peeled potatoes 8 hours a day for 30 cents an hour, or a day, I don't know. And my mother, who knew many, many languages, was a secretary on a higher level, and she get 1 franc. Par heure ou par jour? Tu gagnais 1 franc par heure ou par jour? She doesn't remember if it's per day or for and once my husband spotted her, so he put every 30 cents aside to be able to buy her something, but they had nothing. Ouais. Ah d'accord.
And do you know how long, do they remember how long they were in the refugee camp?
Combien de temps vous étiez dans le camp de réfugiés? Le premier, enfin il y en avait qu'un. Du camp de Kasztner, on vous a amené dans un camp de réfugiés en Suisse.
Oui.
Combien de temps vous êtes resté là-bas?
Pas tellement.
She doesn't remember.
And from there, where did they go from that
Et
camp?
de là-bas, tu es allé où? Chez tante Alice?
Non.
En France, à Limoges, tout de suite? Du camp, tu es allé à Limoges?
Justement, je suis en train de me demander.
She has a blank between there and going to France. First to Geneva, and then they went. My grandfather was he was a famous person. He was so straight, doesn't exist nowadays, not even by Rosh Yeshivas. They take their whole family. When they are called to a place, a beautiful place of holiday, they bring the chaparine to bring their whole. My grandfather wouldn't let my grandmother come with him on their own cheshbon at the end of the war. Shema, lest somebody might think that he took advantage and took her with.
Wow.
No, there was a different generation, straight kacha. But my father was the same. We didn't have a lot of money, and we never asked cheaper for chinuch, because the Gaon in Vilna said that if you want to succeed the chinuch, then you have to pay yourself. And because he said, what's the game? I'm going to ask for less, and then they're going to come and schnorr that we give for the same yeshiva or school. So very, very straight, a different story than today.
And so obviously your parents, it's not so obvious, but that they kept the emunah throughout this whole, because it's not a simple thing to have gone through, to have lost the families, to have.
I'm sure that they had problems.
But they remained from they remained from, and they kept emunah. And the sisters, they all remained from.
All became frei. The sisters in my father's family, everybody was from. My mother's story, because from Bergen Belsen to the camp. From there they went to Israel. Israel, at that time, Israel was Ben Gurion, was all the terrible things, gehabt to the army by force, everything. Her 4 sisters became frei. But my grandfather, that's part of what killed him. My grandmother survived him by 45 years at least, or 50 years of widowership. And she took care of the grandchildren to try to save them. Some are a bit less, some are a bit more.
Are you in touch? Are you in touch with the family?
Yeah, but such different worlds. They're not stunned. They're very frei. By now, besides 1 sister, all her sisters are dead. But they were one after the other.
And your mom, what number was she of the sisters?
First.
She was the oldest.
And she was stuck in France. She remained. She didn't go to Israel because of my father. And so therefore she remained from.
Well, you never know. Please, Bezrat Hashem, with the spirit of.
Yeah.
But they all
My
all live in.
My grandfather was called Abraham, Adolf in Hungary. Lo Aleinu, nobody called anymore. So I have. Oui. Avram, yeah. So my son, I have a son, my oldest son is called Avram, and he's such a Talmud Chacham.
But Sylvie, can I mention your mother's sisters that came here? They're all living here, and all the grandchildren are living here.
They all lived here.
But that means that they all remain Jewish.
Yeah. One lives in America, Avi, but I think all the others are here. No, they're all Jewish.
So
it's decent people.
That's not a simple thing.
Yeah. It's decent people, married, not divorced, faithful to their wives. It's decent people, but totally frei.
But that they remain Jewish is a big thing. It's a big thing. And have you got any pictures of your parents or grandparents? Do you have any pictures?
I might have, but then you have to come another time. I have to select because she won't have patience now for another hour.
Okay. Oh yes, so we will put that in. And then I just want to ask, when your mom would speak to you, did she ever say, this is the message that I want to instill, this is what I've learned and this is what I want you to give over to your children?
She said she's very humanistic, so she said she's an intellectual, very, very, and she's rational. She's a hard, rational person. So she said one can take much more than one thinks one can take. And in front, and you know, we're French. Napoleon said nothing stands in front of the willpower, and she tried to give us a certain strength.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you in kol halev, from the bottom of my heart. It's such a zchut to meet you. It's such a zchut. It's the greatest honor and a privilege.
De nous rencontrer.
It's a great honor and a privilege.
C'est sa passion de faire des choses comme ça. Et il est le dentiste de Tipi et de Khani, parce que la famille de Khani ou de Tipi, je ne sais plus, l'un des deux va là-bas, alors ça a continué. Il est d'Afrique du Sud d'origine, et il a parlé de ça, parce qu'il parle toujours de ces choses-là, et il a posé des questions, et elles ont dit que toi tu étais dans le train. Et c'est comme ça que ça a commencé, dans le train de Kasztner, et c'est pas la première fois ni la deuxième fois qu'il téléphone, ça fait des mois qu'il veut te rencontrer. Ouais, et maintenant il t'a rencontré.
So, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. In kol halev, bemet toda rabah.
And I'm going to write. This is my parents' wedding in Geneva, in the courtyard of Maître Mathieu Muller, who was a big lawyer and helped the Jews in all kinds of fashions and was the head of Agudas Israel in Paris for many, many years. And helped Yiddishkeit a lot later on. And amongst other things, in his courtyard, my parents got married. It was still during the war.
And do you know the year?
Yeah, in 45, beginning of 45.
But still during the war?
Yeah. The 8th May was the end of the war.
And do you have some more pictures?
I have pictures of all the children. I have a lot of pictures. This is a family. Wait a minute, that's with grandchildren. This is part of the family. We have many pictures. No, take this one.
And who's the Rav?
That's a friend of ours in Paris. He never married, and Raoul, one called him. He was a painter, and we even have pictures of him that he made. A big tzaddik in Paris who never married because he had many, many sisters, and he waited for all his sisters to get married. It was in the olden times like that. It's not a...
And you have a beautiful picture of the family.
Here I have, for example, this is one that's my fourth son who gets married. Everybody is mishpocha.
So this is the greatest revenge. This is the greatest nakama.
The greatest?
Revenge.
Yeah, of course.
This is mamish the greatest revenge.
Of course. Il voulait voir une photo de votre mariage. Il voulait prendre une photo de votre mariage. Et il y a dans ta chambre une photo de papa et de toi.
Wow, so thank you so much.
What's your phone number? What's your name?
Thank you so much.
What's your name?